And we're back at you with number 17, Bogue Stewart Master Plan, which include the general plan amendment, specific plan amendment, which is adopting the master plan, the public facilities finance plan, pre-annexation zoning, and the environmental impact report.
All right, so you have me for a little bit tonight. So this is a big one here before you tonight. And so just to recognize a few people in attendance, we have Sean Menard, who's the developer's representative with MHM Engineering, developer, the applicant owner, Mr. Lanza is in the crowd, and then Paul Stevenson with ESA, and our attorney, CEQA guru, Shannon, with the rest of the staff. So we're here to help answer any questions as we go through this. And so to kick this off, the purpose tonight is really a culmination of years of planning and activities to hold a public hearing, then consider certifying the Bogue Stewart Master Plan EIR with accompanying errata sheets, approving the general plan amendment, adding the planned area and land use to the city's general plan, approving the associated specific plan, and introducing an ordinance approving the pre-annexation zoning of the area. So quite a few actions with this tonight. So the Bogue Stewart Master Plan, it's a document that it guides the orderly development of approximately 741 acres in the southeast quadrant of the city. The project proposes to create a new high-quality neighborhood with a full range of land uses in South Yuba City with a complete infrastructure plan. Bogue Stewart Master Plan area, it's bounded on the west by Walton Avenue, on the north by Bogue Road, on the east by the levee, by the Feather River Levee, and then on the south by Stewart Road. The EIR analyzed this project on two different levels. At a project level, for the phasing, for phase one is in the blue, Newcomb Ranch, as you see right here. And then phase two, which is Kells East on the west side of Highway 99. And then the remainder of the project is program level for phase three is what we've called the remainder of that area. Newcomb Ranch is approximately 161 acres. Kells East is around 93. So the project objectives with establishing the Bogue Stewart Master Plan and the EIR is to create high quality neighborhoods, maintain integrity of the surrounding residents, support internal and adjacent agricultural uses, provide street grid for multiple travel modes, incorporate high quality landscaping and architectural features. Coordinate development with infrastructure, support Sutter County LAFCO approval, provide open space and parks, create development above the base flood of 100 years. A little background, October 13th is when this project was initiated. The city county discussed potential southern expansion of the city's sphere of influence to accommodate new development. In 2014, Newcomb Ranch landowners applied for pre-annexation zoning. In March 2014, city began landowner outreach in south area to determine the master plan's boundary. And later in October, based on landowner outreach, the city moved forward with a master plan for an area north of Stewart Road. February 2015, Kells East Ranch owner applied for a tentative subdivision map. January 2016, the city entered into a contract with ESA to draft the Bogue Stewart Master Plan and the environmental document, the EIR. In May 2019, the draft Bogue Stewart Master Plan and the draft EIR circulated for public comment. Last month, on November 13, 2019, a public hearing at the Planning Commission considered the project, making a recommendation for approval to the City Council. And that's where we're at tonight. And so before you is a picture of the land use plan that incorporates a mix of land uses. Residential neighborhood makes up about 62%, 464 acres of the area. Commercial and employment is about 15%, 108 acres. And then the public, including roads, parks, in the school area makes up about 23%, 170 acres of the area. Full range of housing types, approximately 1,328 single-family residences, 1,200 multifamily residences, and will accommodate about 6,700 new residences when it's fully built out. Business and employment, there's some square foot numbers related to the commercial development. The neighborhood commercial is approximately 7.2 acres. Community commercial is 36.7 acres. Office park is about another 8.6 acres that we would be adding to our general plan area. The infrastructure through the master plan, with Sean's team, they really dive into how to make this work with city staff as far as getting the sewer, the water, the utilities to the project and making sure that it meets floodplain and drainage requirements to facilitate that construction. Parks, a little breakdown on the park space. 23%, 170 acres, and note that most of that park area, a lot of that park area, we're utilizing detention ponds with some small neighborhood parks, and then also along the Gilsizer Slough area, as you can see in this exhibit. So you got the Gilsizer Slough area where it'd be widened to help with drainage, and then you also have detention ponds on both sides of the highway that will be trellised in order to help facilitate usable space. So interconnected streets. Here's just kind of a, I don't know how well it comes across for you, but kind of a high level overview of the street layout. There's some dashed lines there showing a proposed layout of Newcomb and Kells. As you'll notice on the areas outside of the Newcomb and Kells phases, you won't see those dashed lines because it hasn't come down to the project level yet. And so one of the big things to note with this one is that the Planning Commission, we had a comment that received that asked why this Newcomb Ranch Road didn't continue out to Highway 99 through here. And this was done specifically through the land use plan to make sure that we weren't getting traffic volumes that would need an additional intersection. And so through that analysis and that land use plan and how they developed how many houses and the commercial, that was a priority because we didn't want to trigger another intersection here midstream. The master plan, what this is, I put it in there for reference. It's really a key. So when you look at these roadways, each one of these letters represents a different road section that has to do with the width of the road. They change slightly, so it's easy to say Bogue Road's going to be 4 lanes. Phillips Road's going to be 2 lanes for part of it and then 4 lanes for the rest. But each part of that road, it changes slightly based on if it has a shared path, restricted right-of-way, or something else going on. And so through that master plan document, we've developed these cross sections that we could later on use as development occurs, that we could say, okay, as that development occurs adjacent to that area, you need to have a 12-foot lane, you need to have a 6-foot bike lane, and a shared path 10-foot to help with that. And so that really memorializes how that development will occur with those roads. Here's a high-level view of, just to give that quick reference to the number of lanes. So Bogue Road, you could see, is 4 lanes. You got the green. The green is, so you got green is 2 lanes, purple is 3 lanes, and the blue is 4-lane road. So just kind of a high level, what the carrying capacity of that is for the roads. But each road will be slightly different depending on how the width and how that works in the neighborhood. Okay, so the traffic circulation element of the EIR is always a big part of the study. And so with this EIR, we analyzed these intersections in town with Fear and Pierce, a traffic consultant, and we basically determined the compliance with the city's general plan requirements, including the level of service standards, to determine mitigation measures. So they look at those intersections, and then they develop the model for the city, and then they put in what the growth is, and then we look at that. We look at those intersections to see how they're going to be impacted by the volume of cars, and then to make sure that they meet the city's minimum standards of service. And so when they dip below that level of service, then we require them to put mitigations in where they have to do certain improvements to enhance it. And so with that, at full build out, there's seven intersections that will be mitigated. What is it here? 6 of them will have new signals. The existing signal at 99 and Bogue will be enhanced where it is modified to increase turning movements. And then these other intersections are new, and they're triggered at different levels of development depending on their impact. So depending on how the development comes in and phasing, there'll be money paid into the mitigation funds. There'll be money for each development. A portion of that, those mitigations are paid, and then at some point it's triggered, and then it's required. And so, just to be clear, so there's new signals at State Route 99 in Stewart, Walton and Bogue, Railroad in Lincoln, Phillips Bogue, Railroad in Bogue, and Gilsizer Ranch in Bogue. And so, so on the existing system, you're going to see one at full build out at Bogue and Walton. Your Railroad and Bogue, right now, that's a really busy intersection. That's been conditioned that either if this commercial development comes in first, or if 2/3 of the dwelling units get built inside Newcomb Ranch Phase 1, then that signal will be required. And then additionally, if the commercial comes in first, whenever the commercial comes in, they'll be required to build Bogue Road to the full width to Railroad. The timing, as stated earlier, the timing for other mitigation improvements will occur based on the amount of development and background traffic growth. So Bogue Road. So at the Planning Commission, there was a lot of public input and Planning Commission input regarding Bogue Road at the existing homes just west of Railroad. There's development on the south side that has a number of houses in a row there, and the right of way is tight there. And so there was a request to make sure we had sidewalks, bike lanes through that area, and the originally proposed cross section, we were hesitant to have that sidewalk in there because we didn't want to take additional right of way, and then also the impacts on the road. But when we took a tight look at the right of way, and in order to facilitate that, we can make it work, but we just had to squeeze it in. And so what we've done is, at the end of this recommendation, we've revised that cross section F to basically take it from a 12-foot lane to 10-foot lanes. You make the sidewalks from originally 5 foot, 6 foot to 4 foot. And so we've shrunken everything down to get into that existing right of way to try to help meet all the goals. And basically to still have that sidewalk path on the south side, not take right of way, so we're not getting into to issues with eminent domain or just high costs with trying to buy people out, while also trying to satisfy that need for mobility. So here is a slide with the bike and pedestrian connectivity. It might be a little bit hard to see, but I just want to point out the green urban buffer, the ag buffer urban area setback. And so those areas that are adjacent to agriculture, we've set out a cross section, a road cross section that's approximately 160 feet, so it provides that additional ag buffer. And then also in here, we've looked at the trail where we have a shared path to make some connectivity where you have this biking shared path trail to go through it, through the subdivision. Additionally, there's development standards. With this new area being brought into the city general plan, through the master plan, it establishes standards to substitute for zoning, design guidelines for all types of uses, intended to ensure high quality community, they'll be attractive. The finances. So it's expensive. So the backbone infrastructure, when you see this number, this is just for Bogue Stewart master plan. So this is $79 million. This is just for those roads that you saw for the backbone infrastructure, not the internal roads for the Bogue Stewart master plan. That backbone infrastructure includes roads, storm drainage, utilities, water, sewer, dry utilities, and then the parks. So with each phase, you got approximately $26 million for phase 1 and $17 million in phase 2. The remainder, phase 3, would be $36 million. And logistically, they would have to go in this phase just in order to facilitate the, we're not anticipating them to jump out of phase due to the way the sewer has to be built from the east to the west. Project includes requirements to pay applicable impact fees, Bogue Stewart master plan fees, drainage fees associated with gill sizer or city drainage, lighting landscape maintenance districts, and establishing a CFD for residential multifamily units. The finance plan basically for this project basically summarizes that it's a high cost burden for construction infrastructure for these homes at the estimated sale price, approximately $427,000 for low density units, $350,000 for the medium density, and a $228,000 estimated sale price for the medium density. So with this high infrastructure cost, there's anticipated that it's going to be hard to get through this. And so we just, as City Council, you've recently been through the the workshop on Harder specific plan, and then also on the impact fee study. And so when we look at updating our impact fees and also doing our traffic analysis, and we update our different master plan documents for the utilities, water and sewer, and then the traffic, we're going to take into consideration this Bogue Sewer master plan with and without to see how that comes into play. So we're looking into that. So environmental impact report, as mentioned briefly before, it was at two levels. The program Bogue Sewer master plan for the general, so the program level for the Bogue Stewart master plan, the general plan amendment and the rezone, and then at the project level for Newcomb Ranch and Kelsey East Ranch subdivisions and development agreements. The EIR, due to the inability to mitigate potential significant impacts, the city must make a statement of overriding considerations in order to approve the project. Potential significant impacts include agriculture, air quality, biology, cultural resources, and transportation. The overriding considerations are that there are economic, legal, social, technological, or other benefits associated with the project that outweigh the unavoidable adverse environmental impacts with the project. Future steps. After consideration tonight, the tax exchange agreement between the city and the county must be approved by City Council and the Board of Supervisors prior to Sutter LAFCO consideration. Negotiations are currently ongoing. Following City Council's decision on the Bogue Sewer master plan, if approved, Sutter LAFCO will consider a sphere of influence amendment for the entire plan area and a separate annexation request for Newcomb Ranch. And so currently staff is gearing up with the developer on that cost share on how we're going to submit to LAFCO for the sphere amendment, and then to run it together with the annexation for phase one. So with that, we have the recommendations tonight. Adopt the findings required by CEQA guidelines section 15091. Certify the environmental impact report for the master plan, general plan amendment 1405, and rezoning 1404, as well as the Newcomb Ranch subdivisions, the Kells East subdivisions, and development agreements within the planning area. Adopt the proposed mitigation monitoring and reporting program. Adopt a statement of overriding considerations pursuant to CEQA. Adopt the Bogue Sewer master plan and the accompanying general plan amendment and pre-annexation zoning for the approximately 741 acres. And then I'd like to add to update the EIR final errata to include the updated road section F for Bogue Road and include Mr. Teague's comments and the city's response into the final errata. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, we have, this is a public hearing situation, so I'm just going to jump right into that. And ban this. All right, so the public hearing of the Bogue Stewart Master Plan, which includes the general plan amendment, specific plan amendment, public facilities finance plan, pre-annexation zoning, and environmental impact report is now open. If there are any members of the public who would like to address the council on the issue, please step up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. I do have two speaker cards. May I ask or invite up to the podium? I believe it's Mr. Ricky, followed by John Teague. And then, of course, whomever else may decide to speak, please feel free. You, Mr. Ricky?
Yes, sir.
Okay, come on up. Thank you for coming.
Excuse me. My name's Will Ricky, and I happen to live in the Key Lock area, which is the county, which was up in debate earlier, and it is on Bogue Road there. And my question is that the increase in traffic on the Bogue Road, which is going to immensely increase. I live on Jeffrey, which is right off of Bogue Road. It comes down and it turns. Jeffrey's a road that goes, it takes 5 turns and it still stays the same road. I'm wondering about the increase in traffic, and you're shrinking the sidewalk, and I usually walk around the area, and I do walk Bogue Road, and there are parts there where there are no sidewalks, and it's nip and tuck at times, and the traffic increase is already immense, as was stated earlier, that at the rush hour times early in the morning or late in the afternoon, it is almost it's very difficult to get on Jeffrey onto Bogue as it is presently. And with that increase in traffic and everything, it's probably going to have to make it even more difficult. And I do understand that they're putting a light at Railroad and a light at Phillips. But right now, Jeffrey is used as a shortcut between Bogue Road down to Lincoln School down there. Or excuse me, Lindcrest School. So a lot of cars come down and do that shortcut, and then they drive in there. So the increase in traffic is the only thing that I care about. I understand seeing all the problems that the city has with financing and things like this. Development is what we need to make things better. So I just want to address that one point. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. And Mr. Teague. Just repeat, if anybody else would like to speak, please feel free to queue up behind Mr. Teague.
John Teague, 999 Stewart Road. I actually had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Moody this afternoon, and he answered a lot of my questions, but I do have some further questions. I submitted 2 documents to the council tonight. I'm hoping you had an opportunity to see them. I'm going to explain what those documents are. The first document included 2 letters that I had submitted in response to the EIR for the Bogue Stewart Master Plan. Unfortunately, those 2 letters didn't get included in the EIR, and so and that first document also includes a response from the city at some point later. It's just this last month to my 2 letters. So that's what that first document is. So the second document is actually further questions that I had in response to the city's response back to me in November, last November. So my first thing is I want to make sure that my comments are included in my 2 letters in the environmental impact report. I'm asking the city to be sure that those are included in the final EIR, and I think Mr. Moody has also made a movement to request that also. My second concern, this has been an ongoing concern of mine, is drainage on my property. My property drains basically from east to west. I've had a meeting with both Sean Menard and Mr. Moody about this, and my big issue is that historically I've been able to drain to the west, and I'm concerned that I want to be able to keep that drainage, and any impact that the development would do, I want to make sure that I can still drain my property adequately, and so I don't have flooding. So I want some assurance that the council agrees and that these things are going to be taken care of and put into some type of a agreement or condition on this development. So that's a question. Second item is city sewer. You know, the pro for me for this development is city water, city sewer. I'm hoping that there'll be an opportunity to connect to city sewer and also city water. So I'm asking that there be some, I guess some means for me to do that. And also, I have a lot of questions about the cost, what have you. But the big issue for me is, will there be a means to have a connection to city water and city sewer? The road, fourth item was the road improvements. There's a lot of questions about road improvements. If I'm going to be charged any of the road improvements in front of my property, I think that still is kind of a, I understand right now that without me annexing into the city, that the road improvements really won't happen. But in the future, I would like to know, will any of those costs be put to me? Do I have any more time?
Technically, no. Do you have just one more question?
Okay.
How many
Last
more do you
question
have?
was
Yeah, one
the,
more. Okay.
I have several more questions on here. You have them. I would appreciate responses back to them. Most of them have to do, they're minor items back from that, though. Single-story housing, I believe, has already been resolved. My property is a single-story house, and I was told that single-story housing is a condition next to my adjacent property for the development. I would like to make sure that that is the case, and I'm asking if that is the case. So the rest of the items I would like answers to, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. T. We appreciate your input as well and your questions. I do believe we are prepared and planning on answering each and every one of them. Yes. All right. Thank you, sir. Welcome, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Sharon Smith, and I also live on Stewart Road. I live at 1010 Stewart Road. And I'm just quickly want to say, and go on record and say, I'm not happy about all the growth that's happening, because when I moved out there for the environment that was there. I understand that growth happens. I just want to state that my concern is the traffic. Nothing's been said about Riverbend School, which is at the end of Stewart Road at this time. Right now, from the sounds of it, I don't hear anything about more traffic lights on Stewart, and we have a horrendous problem in the morning when school starts and in the evening when school gets out. And so it sounds to me like a lot of traffic will be routed around, and people will find Stewart Road and be going down Stewart Road. If it's going to be 4-lane, it's going to be worse than it is now. And now, as it was stated before, it is a very funny kind of road. It gets wide and then it's skinny. We don't have sidewalks. We don't have street lights at this point. And so it is a very dangerous road right now. And so with all this development that's coming, I worry about what's going to happen when you add in the fact that we have a school at the end of that road and there's not going to be any traffic lights on that road. I'm a little concerned about that. That's all I wanted to say about what I'm concerned about.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else care to say anything? Yes, sir. I mean, ma'am, come on up.
My name is Joanne Murdoch, and I live at 998 Bogue Road. I'm one of those 7 houses that are on the south side of Bogue Road in Area F. In fact, my house is the one next to the orchards that are going to be taken out. And I'm concerned about, well, the first thing I'm concerned about is how am I going to back my car out onto Bogue Road when it's 3 or 4 lanes and traffic rushing by it. It's bad enough now, but it's going to be even worse. The other thing I'm worried about is my side yard, which now is nicely next to an orchard, but it's going to be next to a subdivision. And am I going to have to pay for taking out my fencing and redoing the side of that yard? Am I going to be charged for all of that reconstruction of my side yard? Plus, I have an enormous 40-foot tall walnut tree at the back of that back corner of that yard. Am I going to be charged to take out that tree because they're going to be building houses back there? I'm really concerned about what's going to happen to my lot because I'm right at that rear corner where everything's happening. And the last thing I'm concerned about is my 2 very obese raccoons that come. I mean, there's a lot of wildlife in that orchard, and where are they going to go? I've got skunks and opossums and raccoons, and I guess maybe that's the biology part of the environment. But, you know, it seems like the lady before me, we moved there because it was country. Now that's all going away. That's very sad, don't you think? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ben, is the question about the tree and the fence, or is that something you're able or comfortable with answering right now? So she doesn't have to be.
Yeah, definitely. So when development happens, the developer would be responsible to handle any sort of work involving to put in those improvements. So if there's a new fence, there'll have to be coordination when you get on the property line where they'll reach out. Typically, they reach out to the property owner, especially with the grades. A lot of times, if the grades don't quite match up where old standards, sometimes those houses were built below the road versus the new standard where we have them elevated to a certain part. They'll go through there and actually build a concrete or a masonry foundation and then put the new fence up. But there's no requirement by the city or expectation by the developer that the property owner would have to pay. And so, but typically there's coordination with those boundary lines that we could do it so you don't have to hold back a foot and put it in a new one, you know, but there's definitely coordination around that. I could answer the other questions or however you want to do it.
Well, if you're comfortable, go for it. It'd be nice to get them answered for folks.
So I guess starting off with the Bogue Road improvements, definitely through the city's current general plan and build out of the city, Bogue Road is slated to be a major arterial holding, carrying 20,000 cars a day. And so that's going to get busier and busier with the existing development, as the city's general plan builds out. That road is slated with this, it's actually an opportunity to improve the roadway because when development comes on the south side, you're actually going to have the funding and the resources to build that wider road. And with that roadway, they'll build 2 lanes going eastbound, a center turn lane, and then 1 northbound, westbound lane. And so you'll have signals at Phillips and Railroad that provide a break. They'll have a break, and then you'll have that center turn lane for the residences to basically be able to stop and turn in. And so also with some of the concerns about how you'd back out, we've definitely thought about that. The concerns on how do you implement new into existing situations. I don't know if I have a picture here of Bogue Road. But with that new development, as you back out, sometimes we work out with their driveway to make sure it's wide enough so they could park. But you're gonna have that area, 4-foot sidewalk, 2-foot curb and gutter, and then a 4-foot bike lane. So you're gonna have that 10-foot distance from the travel lane. So there's gonna be some area. It's not gonna be right at the tip of their driveway. Going to Mr. Teague, guess I had the chance to meet with Mr. Teague, and unfortunately it was a little later than we would have desired, but we got together today to help explain through those processes, and it's complicated, and we recognize what he wants, and with that drainage, that's really, the drainage in water and sewer typically come at a staff level. When the improvement plans come in for that phase that would be adjacent to his house, that's when the staff looks to make sure there's not, we don't want to create a problem with the improvement plan. So that's really with the plan check. The big thing is, hey, we don't want to make a lake or put some sort of dam up to cause a problem that we're going to have to deal with. And so the storm drainage is actually relatively simple in that area because, I don't know, Mr. Teague is down in this area, and it would be abutting this lower phase, this phase 8, which is a ways off as this development starts up on the north end and works its way down. So the drainage with those road improvements will be storm drained directly adjacent to them. And so typically we stick out a field DI so it collects that water. The water and sewer, it definitely, we know most people want water and sewer, so when we analyze that, we try to push it as far as we can because sooner or later, there's a request to extend it. Right now, through the city's current policy, if it's adopted into the sphere, so if this moves forward to LAFCO and LAFCO approves the sphere modification, then the current policies that the city has with council recently approving extraterritorial agreements. So if he goes into the sphere but stays into the county, he could, through that extraterritorial agreement process, he could possibly tie on to utilities, or if he comes in through an annexation, then he would have that opportunity. Now, the cost with those, it's really hard to say the cost because it really depends on the phasing of the project. If the sphere of expansion goes through in the next few months, technically he could hook up there then after. It just, you'd have to have a few $1,000,000 to run the line down there. And so it really comes down to timing, reimbursement credits, and then when that time comes for those improvements, that we stub them as close as possible so we could pick up those residences that were developed in the county with different standards at those times. So for that question, long story is, yes, the city has processes in place that if it comes in the sphere, he can hook to water and sewer. There will be a cost to that, but he can. Let's see if I try to take notes, so please remind me if I forgot any. Stewart Road, absolutely. We've got a lot of feedback from Stewart Road in the schools. And again, we look at that really, that this is in the county and it's a problem right now, and there's no resolution to it, where with the development, there actually is a resolution, because now we actually have a design for the roadway. We have impact fees being collected, and as development occurs to the west, they'll have to provide their frontage, and then also there'll be impact fees collected with the development of those houses to go towards that. And so we do recognize that it's a narrow road right now, that's basically slated to be, the way that the road's planned to be developed in the master plan is a 2-lane road with a middle turn lane. So it's almost like Stabler without parking. So you'll see 1 lane in each direction with that center turn lane. And at the traffic volume, most of the traffic out of these neighborhoods goes to 99. And so the traffic flows to 99 or flows north to Bogue. About 25% of it flows off to Railroad and Garden Highway, but a majority of it comes off 99, goes into the neighborhood, comes back and goes in. But yes, there'll be that morning traffic for school. And so really the timing on when that school gets built and then when the new school gets built, you're going to have an impact, but it's going to be a while, because phase 8 is going to be a while before we punch this road all the way down to Stewart Road. But at that point, there will be morning traffic going to school. But at the same time, we will also have money from impact fees that could be used where this road now is widened through here, and there's opportunities to make it a little safer. So I'm not sure if I missed any, but I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Through the mayor, if I may address Mrs. Baroque's questions about the raccoons and wildlife. I believe she did have a question regarding that. This particular project has prepared an environmental impact report, or an EIR. That's the highest level of assessment and analysis that can be done for a project. As part of the EIR, it included an analysis of biological resources that would be potentially impacted by this project. They did look at raccoons and other wildlife as part of this process. Currently, there are mitigation measures in place to protect what they call special status plants and wildlife. As much as I like raccoons, it turns out they are not a special status wildlife and have shown an amazing ability to adapt to urban life in some ways. There are mitigation measures in place designed to reduce those impacts, and so the EIR did assess them. I'm available for any questions.
So that would include very obese raccoons as well.
Well fed.
All right. I'm sure well fed. All right. Thank you, Ben. Ma'am, did you have, go, feel free. Come on down. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Patty Leland. I live on El Valles Circle in the BSMP area, right off of Railroad. I did have a chance to talk briefly with the council some months ago. There are multiple concerns, certainly, with this development, and certainly, as I stated to the council back then, how this came about and how it has been pushed forward in many undue influence ways. Ultimately, the consequences of the impact of 6,700 residential units being implemented in a area with limited, even with the studies, many two-lane roads, single direction, perhaps a central lane in some, and in the future, up to 2 lanes. There's been a lot of buzz for several years about the potential of Costco coming in on that corner of 99 and Bogue. And for all of you, I've been a Costco member since 1988 from Southern California, and certainly the volume of vehicles surrounding an operation like that, or some other commercial business, if it is not a Costco, in addition to the 6,700 residential units on top of the existing Shanghai Bend development just down the road on main feeder roads through Bogue, is ultimately going to fall on the residents in that area. Does anyone on the council live in that area? So my concern is not in my backyard. So you would not be dealing with the consequences of the significance of traffic in that area, nor the impacts on Highway 99 from going from a 65 mile an hour zone and having a backup both north and south attempting to turn into a Costco and or 6,700 resident area. The concern of rear-ending accidents, the added traffic on Berry Road for the school, elementary school that's there, and also for Riverbend. There was a LAFCO letter or email in September of 2019 discussing the concerns preserving of the agricultural land and the lack of justification of a true need to wipe away significant enough to disregard existing land use policies for sphere of influence changes, and those are also concerning.
Ma'am, you are out of time, but I think the gist is the concern over traffic, all in many different ways.
Well, and really the unethical process in this case that was fueled by local developers and political aspirations, resulting in this project speeding towards irreparable damage to our residents and our city in the long term, over the excitement of something shining and new.
All right. Thank you very much. Would anybody else from the public care to say anything? Tom, come on up.
My name's Thomas Burns, and I have my office over in that area. So I'm in support because I like to see growth. But I have one question, or actually 2 questions. I heard him say phase 1, 2, and 3. Is that all in the same property? Or does it go out past this property like phase 3? And then, or this boundary, No?
Everything is within the BMSP.
Okay. Is it 3 phases or is it more than 3 phases?
3.
Oh, just 3? Okay. And then,
Although the third one is going to be kind of an incremental one. The first 2 are specific.
okay. I was concerned too about the multifamily. Is that 3-story, 2-story, 4-story? I'm curious about that kind of thing.
Good question. Thanks, Tom.
So picture goes a long ways here. I think in the land use plan right in the beginning. So the multifamily is the little darker yellow, or the low medium. Where am I at? The orange. Here we go. So the multifamily, and gosh, you figure out how to work this thing. There we go. So really, this is a high level. We're adopting a general plan with a land use, And so within that land use, it would follow under the city's zoning regulations or specific standards that were established in here. And so as long as those densities are within that general plan use, they could be those multiple stories. And so as far as if it came in 2 or 3 story or even 4 story, we would consider that. And then as long as it matched up with the general plan and our zoning regulation regarding the densities and any height requirements, we would look at that, and it would be an applicant, or you would have to work through a variance process. The question beforehand, I just wanted to touch on it a little. Tom, what was the first question?
How many phases?
Oh, the phases. So, so I'll get into this a little bit with the next items, talking specifically about Newcomb and Kells. Where's the phase map? It's here somewhere. I don't know if there's a way to fast forward. There we go. Phase 1, phase 2. So there's multiple parcels within the phase, but they've joined together with the application. And with the way that tentative map was set up is that it's originally going to be divided into large parcels. And so I have an exhibit on the next presentation where it basically cuts those into large parcels that will still farm and have no development rights. But then as they sell off those individual phases to developers, then they'll be developed out. So even though we call it phase 1, there's going to be multiple incremental phases as part of each one. And so really when we say the phasing at this point with this discussion is with the EIR, talking about how we analyze for the financial plan and the infrastructure, how we looked at the project level versus the program level. But each one of these phases will have multiple incremental phases within them. To add to the ag, definitely that is a consideration that we didn't take lightly, and we looked at it from the city and with consideration from LAFCO. And the city's stances on that is that, and with the county, with discussions, is that when you look at the county's general plan, that area has already been identified in their general plan to be zoned for development. And so in their development is a state residential, where it's a larger parcel size. And so through their general plan, they could come in and develop on the south side of Bogue Road today, and they would have to make a bigger lot because they don't have utilities. And so through this, our argument is really that when it comes into the city through a master plan development, we're really ultimately saving ag area in Sutter County because we're providing better land use and providing those ag buffers around that so we don't run into those problems. So just to add a little bit to that. And to clarify, it's 6,700 residents, a population with about 2,500 dwelling units. Just to clarify, it's about 2,500 dwelling units total in the entire project.
Thank you, Ben.
Mr. Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, I'll answer the final question.
Sure,
With regards
go
to
ahead.
the process. There was some concerns that this might have been an unethical process. I can't speak to the ethics of it. However, I will say that the state legislature and the city council have set up a process under law and statute, and the process that was followed for this matter, including the public notices, the Brown Act, and everything else that's been sent out, has been followed.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yes,
Hello, my
sir.
name is Sean Menard. I'm with MHM Engineering, and I represent two of the clients own Newcomb Ranch, and also the other client owns the Kells East. And we've worked on this project for quite some time. I was just thinking about it. In 2013, we started working on it. My son was just entering high school. He was shorter than me, and he couldn't drive. Now he can drive, and he's taller than me, and he can drink. So it hasn't been forced through. It's been a long process. We've done a lot of studies, and I've worked with city staff on the sewer, water, drainage, not only on our clients' projects or properties, but the whole entire area, because we know in order to develop an area, you can't just look at your small area, you have to look at the whole. And so we laid out the roadways, the circulation, and tried to address all the concerns that would come up in a meeting like this. So And we support the process the city's gone through, and we look forward to talking about the next items is the Newcomb Ranch project and the Kells. But if you have any questions on the technical side, I did work with the city staff on that, and again, thanks for your time and look forward to moving this project forward.
Thank you, Sean. Anybody else from the public care to say anything? All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, bring the matter back to council.
Through the mayor,
Sir.
Mr. Moody, and maybe Mr. Menard as well. One thing I think that might be of note that came up in my research of this was this area was previously in the city's sphere of influence. Can we confirm that?
That's correct. In the, I'm not sure if west of 99 was, but definitely the east side of 99 to Stewart Road in the 90s, it was in the sphere, as to why we have some of that development to the lower east side.
Okay. Here's just, I'm going to bounce a little bit because some of my stuff has been answered, and I'm hoping I'm not getting too far into the next presentation as well. I share the concern about the access to the school area. Historically, this city, and I'm speaking primarily from experience as a previous first responder, we have not done a very good job of making sure that access in front of schools is safe. And I think that I'm encouraged to hear that you guys are looking at that, because clearly at River Bend School, if that area is increased in traffic, it does pose a risk. So I mean, that's a concern, I think, going forward. General roadway design at the development impact fee meeting and through discussions with builders and developers, it seems to me that this city has design requirements somewhat aesthetically sometimes that get in the way of the development. Landscape strips would be a primary concern here, and it's encouraging to see where you're addressing the property needs, that you're taking that into consideration and not forcing necessarily landscape strips. I'm not suggesting we turn anything into an asphalt jungle, but at the same time, I think that we need to be reasonable when we talk about how roadways are constructed or designed within our city. I mentioned this when we took a first bite at this apple, is that the joint use of school land for open space concerns me, because again, historically, the city has entered into those agreements with the school only to find that for security reasons, valid reasons, the schools lock the gates and that does not become open to the public. And so when we talk about, hey, we're going to consider school land as open space for the public, I don't know that that's factual, and that concerns me. I'm not a fan of roundabouts, so I'll go up and say that right now. I'm sure I'll probably get trumped on that, but not President Trump, but Trump. I know an issue that's going to come up is going to be the along, especially, I believe it's the north boundaries, undergrounding utilities. Again, that was something that was brought up in our recent development impact fee meeting, and the cost to do that and the amount of that. Again, I'm not suggesting that utilities shouldn't be underground. It's my understanding that all the new stuff will be underground, but forcing some of the other stuff to be underground is going to place a burden on the developer. I think we have to be very conscious of that, and where it's reasonable, we may have to make some adjustments there. There was a mention of the Bogue-Stewart Master Plan fee. Can you talk a little bit about what that means and maybe help me understand a little bit more about where you're going to, or how that's going to be developed? I also noticed in the report there was reference from the former Community Development Director, Arnaldo Rodriguez, that there was going to be some fees established. Maybe now is not the time and the place, but it concerns me here. What are those fees as we start to embrace the conversation about impact fees?
Yeah, definitely I could get into a broad level for sure. So to start off with the fees, the Bogue-Stewart Master Plan fee, at this time, those roadways, Stewart Road, the south side of Bogue, well, I shouldn't say Bogue Road, but a portion of Bogue Road, and some of those arterials that are in there or or signals, those mitigations that would potentially be in an impact fee program, they're not in the existing city impact fee program. So when a house gets built in the existing general plan area, they pay that traffic fee that goes for improvements in that area. And so when the Bogue Stewart Master Plan comes in and there's those infrastructure costs to build the road, that fee, this Bogue Stewart Master Plan fee that will have to be developed when they come through with the first phase of development, it's going to pay for things like that backbone of Phillips Road where it's not necessarily the full burden of the first parcel that develop. When those future parcels, if I can do this, explain. So Phillips Road would be a backbone road. If phase one comes in and they build entire Phillips Road to facilitate traffic movement, there's going to be a fee credit there. And so a Bogue Stewart Master Plan fee is going to have to be developed to basically reimburse the developer right now for the entitlement process. So to pay for this study and the process they go through, it's going to pay for those oversizing of the utilities. So when they put in this line, they're not for phase one. This developer is basically going to oversize this to handle the full development, and so there'll be reimbursement of credits and credits established for that reimbursement fee. But it gets a little more complicated where, as the city's updating our master plans for water, sewer, and traffic, there's definitely an urge to, so there's not a double fee, because there is the point, hey, they're paying the Bogue Stewart Master Plan fee, plus they're paying for impact fees that address areas to the north in the existing city. So we're going to analyze that through the traffic model update with the project and without to determine what that area fee would be. You know, if it just falls into the city's impact fee and it's potential that it might go down, it might stay neutral or go up. But if you add more people with less infrastructure, the price theoretically could go down. But so water, sewer, and really when we get into the analysis of it, we have to figure that out. And so that's like the high level on the fee. But I wanted to throw it in there that it's definitely recognized in the conditions of approval for the tentative map that with that first development, somebody's got to we got to sit down and get serious about that, developing that and figuring out the financing on it, because it includes reimbursement to the city for developing the plan, to the original applicants, and then also how we handle that the oversizing.
Following up on that, thank you for that explanation. Will this development subsequently be placed into a CFD, or will it be the current citywide CFD?
So the current condition of approval is that it enters into the existing CFD for residential units, so multifamily and single family. Okay.
There's reference in the plan to the growth policies. I guess, and maybe Shannon maybe have to weigh in on this, is that I think there was some discussion to be had in regards to some of the growth policies are redundant and they're contained in other plan documents. I just want to make sure we don't get into a conflict if we have a reference to a growth policy that we subsequently either change or abandon, because they exist in other places.
Yeah, definitely. And this kind of ties into some of your earlier comments. So for this developer, they weren't lucky enough to see the city change some of those growth policies. So they've basically, at this point, have gone through those 12 growth policies, setting up the DA, establishing the master plan, the specific plan, putting that finance plan together. And so they've really gone through all of those 12 growth policies to this point. Future reference to design changes, undergrounding policy. So with input from council in some of the previous workshops, we said we were going to come back to city council for consideration workshops. And so I'm anticipating late January, early February, that we would come back and have a discussion on undergrounding. Based on, to give you a little more background on historically what we've done and then how that balances out with priorities, and also decreasing visual blight, but at the same time having that balance of what the responsibility is and just making stuff infeasible. And so we'll have a little bit more discussion on that later, but the way the condition of approval for the undergrounding was written for this, that it would tie into whatever the current policy is for the city. So if we update it in 2 months from now, 6 months, or a year from now, depending on what level of development they're at, it would tie into that policy.
Okay.
And then the same with the streets. If we narrow the Parkway strip, we change it to rolled curb, or we look into some of those options when we come back and fine tune it. This definitely gives us a standard, but there's nothing to say that we can't change it.
Okay. Again, when it comes to development, being as consistent and so it's not a moving target for the developer is very important to this council person anyway, in regards to undergrounding and the roadways and other things that are going on. Almost done. The last 3 or more LAFCO issues, as I sit on LAFCO and anticipate this coming forward to LAFCO, obviously you've mentioned it. I know that there's a concern by the executive director of LAFCO about ag mitigation. I just want to make sure that if this is approved and it moves forward, that we as a city are prepared to produce the required documents that are going to satisfy or at least give opportunity for LAFCO to take a good look at that ag mitigation, because it sounds to me like, based upon the presentation anyway, we're saying we can't do anything with the ag.
Well, we want to be careful with that and how we consider it. And so with the ag, we definitely recognize Mr. Benoit's opinion and some state criteria. But then also we appreciate, we want to give Mr. Benoit, work with him, and then also have that study session with LAFCO so they understand what's required by state law and what's recommended. And then also how that affects our community, where each community might be different, where in Sacramento, where they're continuing to fully build and you have to have a green belt, where maybe in Sutter County, due to our floodplain, we really have an established green belt in effect because you can't build south of Stewart Road or out to the west because of the flood issues. And so we want to look at that we're not just arbitrarily sticking some sort of ag mitigation on, because when you build a house, you build it, the ag is gone. And so there's to throw mitigations or some sort of arbitrary condition that may be applicable for a different town isn't necessarily applicable for our town. And so we want to have that workshop with LAFCO, work with them to make sure we're on the same page with everybody to consider that, to look at all the options about our higher density use, the floodplain on how that restricts development in our area. And then definitely it's important that this document is utilized with LAFCO so they could use this EIR to move forward. The developer definitely recognizes that, and through that application process with LAFCO, we're going to have to work with them to either do further analysis or work through that so everybody's on the same page.
That's good. Like I said, I think that is going to be a concern, and my comments are more directed to let's be ready for that concern. 2 more. Mr. Rickey, I think, raised the issue of the keyhole area. I know several folks have raised the issue, well, you guys are doing leapfrog development. Perhaps Mr. Menard or yourself can talk about how we're not going to be doing leapfrog development with this particular plan.
So a little history on that keyhole area for the group. Most of the local residents know that the city now has tried to annex that area twice. And it's been a resounding no that's come across from those residences. With this phase 1 of that application, it would be south of the existing development on that lower part of this. I mean, you got houses right through here, and we're really adding right onto the infrastructure that we go. And so there is consideration that as they move west and the annexations, that as we move farther west, how are we there'll have to be a decision made some point in the future on how we're going to handle that. Are we going to try to annex again? Are we going to consider an island and move forward? Or a decision at that time will have to be made. But right now, we don't consider it leapfrog development. It's directly adjacent to our infrastructure, and it's been zoned in the general plan for the county for development, for an area for future growth, and so we think we're consistent with that.
Thank you for the clarification. Last one is, On the municipal services review, is that part of the action we'll be taking with this one, or is this,
It's later on, it's item 20.
I'll wait then. Thank you.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. You really covered a lot of the questions. I think in looking at the agendas, they're so connected between item 17 to item 20.
You got me for all of them here.
So I was trying to stay within each particular agenda item. I think the concerns in looking at the actual master plan, and when we did the workshop in August, there was one particular question that I referenced back then, and I want to read that one, or a statement, it's not a question, that in the master plan, the Stewart master plan, it's included. And it says, ensure that appropriate funding mechanisms are established to fully fund planned improvements and services over the long term without creating negative fiscal impact to the city general fund. And considering that we just had the audit and the fiscal report before those two, and listening to some of the Vice Mayor Boomgarden on his questions to the connections and the infrastructure underground utilities and how we're going to include those, what's the commitment for the city to this development in starting phase one? Is there a financial part of the city commitment to begin this? Is money going to come out of our pocket first? Let me be clear.
So that reference, the initial reference, that's pretty much straight out of our 12 growth policies that basically was established in the early 2000s, where it's pay as you go. Basically, the thought was the city's not going to supplement development. The developer is going to need to pay for his fair share. And so, so with that, it gets a little technical on is anything going to come out of the city pocket? So the city partnered in this Bogue Stewart master plan for that remainder area to advance the sphere. So we've paid in a minor portion, like 12%, right? I don't know the exact portion of the EIR document.
Right.
And then you also have a larger percent for the sphere document. So there's a small percentage for that in the scheme of things. And then you also have the city's fair share cost of those road improvements. So Bogue Road would be a shared road that's on our impact fee. And so when Bogue Road goes to develop, we're going to have to look at reimbursement credits to the developer as the development happens, or fronting money, and that will be worked out at a later time.
And that's where you were talking about earlier, that's not clearly set up yet. There's
Correct.
Still...
And that comes into play when that development, that specific parcel one, phase one, that incremental parcel comes in. We'll have to work for the specific logistics on how to build it and facilitate it.
So then my next question, as we have low density and medium density areas in the first phase of the development, and looking at the master plan on 3-14, we talked about in here that we would require a density of 20 units per acre or greater to allow for affordable residential housing. So I didn't hear any of that, because I've had many constituents come up to me excited about the Bogue Stewart plan, and then at the same time asking, will I be able to afford a home? And so in that question, just, that statement in here stood out to me on that. So I just would like to have more information on that.
So in the land use plan, we definitely identified areas for that high density and that medium density. Again, it comes down to just a math equation on when it pencils out. And so, unfortunately, what I hear is that it costs almost as much to build the small home, because you have the kitchen, the bathroom, the windows, as it does the large home. And so that's where it's been a struggle for the city to get more of those apartments, high density, to come through, just because it's a pure math equation on what what makes profit and how that plays out. But there is definitely a high-density component, right, zoned right here off of Bogue Road, adjacent to the utilities. I believe that parcel owner is he a member of? He's part of the original application. And so, but as far as the timing on when that will come through, it's uncertain.
Okay, and I just want to add that I'm not a fan of roundabouts as well, so just to know that. That's my 2 cents on that too. Then I didn't know the sequence with the process of reviewing this, but you clarified this, that whatever comes out of this then goes to LAFCO, and I wanted to know and you answered that question about LAFCO. The last part of it is the school system, the traffic, but also the impact of potentially into the schools. What's the plans about developing a new school? Is that, again, as we go to phase 1, phase 2, then something triggers a new school? Is there communication with the district on this? I would just like more information about that.
Sean might be able to add a little bit more information onto this, but there's definitely been communication and correspondence with the Yuba City Unified School District. They designated this area for a future school site, and so the way that works is that they have the first right of refusal, I guess, as far as when they. I'll let Sean ask is how the development works a little bit with the subdivision, but that will be reserved for the school. And should the school turn it down, then it could turn into something different.
So that would be part of what you were asking about, the public area or the grounds area.
Well, and so that's.
I'm just, that relates to that.
So in the parks, we have parks in green, the neighborhood parks, the community parks, and then we have the light green as open space. And so in this formula for parks, we're overparked for this plan per our general plan. So per our general plan, it requires a certain amount of acreage for so many homes. And so in this plan, we're actually over that limit by quite a bit, substantially, due to the detention basins needed to handle the storm drainage, and then also for the soil to use that to elevate the pads for the residential. So I don't know, Sean, I got a slide here with so many acres, but it was definitely substantially proportional that was overparked. And so the school site isn't needed into that calculation to meet the requirement for the minimum park space.
There was, I think in item 20, there was discussion in that, and the LAFCO and some that the existing schools based on phase 1 would be appropriate for the development. So I just had questions about that. And so I would like more clarification. And if you don't have the answer, I can respect that. My other question is on the EIR, the 3 phases are clearly covered in this very healthy book. And I would like more clarity about phase 3. There is really no plan for phase 3. And how long will this EIR cover for that phase 3 with no development plans?
So I'm going to lean to the attorney, but we're going to adopt a general plan which designates that land use that will stay in effect until we change the land use designation. Okay. But as far as a project coming forward, there would have to be further analysis on the project level, but Shannon could add to that.
Yes, Mr. Moody's exactly right. So phase 1 and 2 are done at a project level, which is a very deep analysis of your EIR. However, we don't have the exact details for phase 3. We don't know exactly what's going in there and exactly in what order that's going to be done. So as a result, the EIR actually provides for flexibility to generally assess the cumulative impacts, the maximum amount of traffic, water, infrastructure, and other things that may be coming in, with the understanding that as development comes into phase 3, that you will go down to the specific thing being developed at that site and analyze it at that time based on the existing conditions at that time. So if that's 15 or 20 years in the future, they may be able to springboard off of this document to speed up the process that you have in front of you. yet still address the specific site conditions at that time.
And so that's why we have the additional site-specific plans, an example, harder site-specific plans, and they, we had a large EIR, but I just had a question and you answered it, and I'm good with that. So thank you.
Through the mayor. Ben, I want to thank you and your staff and also the developers. It's been a long time, a long, long time. We're moving forward. There's a few little T's to cross and I's to dot, but I think this is a great thing for our community. Here in the next few months or in a real close future, we'll take care of all the small things and hopefully we can have this development going strong and make our community better. So I just want to thank you and your staff and the developers. Thank you.
Through the mayor, Ben, I'll keep this real short. I have the same concerns that I've heard tonight from people in the audience. Traffic, Vice Mayor, I think you were reading my notes over here because we had a lot of the same things, so I appreciate you asking those questions. I just want to bring up one point. Right now, this whole area is not inside of the city, and it was alluded to earlier that not in our backyard and why we didn't live there. We all have to live in the city limits. None of us could live there and sit on this dais. It is in our sphere of influence, and there are existing problems. And what I'm hearing now is this is a means to an ends of how to correct those over time. I've been down by River Bend. The traffic's atrocious. I've been down Railroad. The traffic's atrocious. I get the country feel out there. But right now, correct me if I'm wrong, we have no way to fix it. But this will, over time, give us the ability to address those problems and fix it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The only two questions I have after making that comment is, what is your timeline for the public of hoping to have phase 1 complete and going into phase 2 and having it complete?
We had a similar question during the planning commission, and it's all development driven and economics and a whole bunch of other factors, of course. But if everything was perfect and we get entitlements and we go through the LAFCO, and we spend all the time doing our design and getting the other improvement approvals we need to get this project through. We'll spend all next year just with that process. So I would say the first time you'd see groundbreaking is 2021 if everything went smoothly. And it would be in the upper area along near Bogue Road, whether it be the commercial or the residential, we can't say. During the planning commission, there was a lot of talk about the commercial breaking ground first. That's a strong possibility, but we can't tell you right now. Usually residential brings the infrastructure and supports the commercial. It may be the other way around here, but the earliest you'll see anything is 2021.
But then beginning 2021 to finish out phase 1, 5 years, 3 years, 10 years. I know there's a lot of variables, but if it worked the way that you would like it to work, approximately how long would each phase 1 and phase 2 take?
There's roughly 600 lots in phase 1 or Newcomb Ranch. Ideally, you'd have an absorption of 150 lots a year, and then you'd have multiple merchant builders like a KB, a Cahovanian, taking each a village down, and you'd be out of this in 5 years. I mean, that'd be the ideal situation. And that's what we're hoping for. But can you guarantee that? If you look at that chart that we saw earlier tonight, that we had 31 building permits, our goal is to change that and bring new development to the town. And we need more absorption than 31 building permits to make this project work. So we need at least 100 to even consider breaking ground. So the hope would be 5 years if we start.
All right, thank you.
All right, if we don't have any more, I just wanted to, also recognize staff and everybody and all your developers and Ben, your folks, and a lot of work went into these documents and this preparation. I think Sean and I, we spoke recently, and it was 6 years is what he was saying. So a lot of work to come to this point, and this is just one more step. But I appreciate all the comments and the concerns that were expressed from the dais today. I also share those, particularly when it comes to the concern over traffic in front of the school. I think the safety of our children and our community is paramount. It's right there, focal point right there. So I'm encouraged to hear that is, we're aware of that, and it's going to be into consideration as we move forward. Also, the regional housing needs allocation for affordable housing, Yuba City's required, our number we were assessed was 2,679 units. It's a lot. It's essentially the entire development here, but I was pleased to know that we are aware of that. I read that in the documentation, and we're focusing on that, so we need to make sure we remain relevant and keep that into our housing element. With the density housing there. Other than that, that was the only one comment I needed to make, other than the fact that I am a fan of roundabouts. So we'll see. We'll have that debate apparently some other time. Pretty big fan, actually. But well, I kept them on four wheels. Yeah, fire engines, I could see how roundabouts and speed bumps are an enemy of a fire engine. However, if you're like me, you don't like to stop, especially when there's no one coming, it's nice. And the worst part about that is a roundabout, I think, is getting behind somebody who doesn't know how to do it. Yeah, that was you, right? No. All right. Anyway, so that being said, we are here we have held the public hearing, and we are here to adopt a series of resolutions. And I will entertain a motion if there's no further comment. I will move to approve.
Through the mayor?
Yes, I knew that was coming.
I'm so sorry. Does that include staff's recommendations with regards to Mr. Teague's comment letter?
Yes, it does. Yes, thank you for clarifying that. I think that's important, and I have no problem including his commentary in the documentation.
I will second that, Mayor.
All right, we have a first and second to approve staff's recommendation. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? None. Thank you very much. I think what we're going to do, I'm going to make a command decision. We are at 9 o'clock. We're 3 hours into this. Let's do a 10-minute break. We'll come back in a second.